The envelope was thick, too thick for junk mail, and it wasn't addressed to him. That's what stopped him in the hallway. Just 3 steps from dropping his keys on the console and heading into the kitchen to kiss her cheek and ask about dinner like any other Tuesday, he saw it. A cream-colored envelope tucked sideways into the stack of bills and magazines, the top edge curled from hasty fingers. His wife's name printed in looping cursive, no return address. He knew her handwriting, this wasn't hers. He picked it up with careful fingers, the way you'd handle a bird with a broken wing. He shouldn't have opened it. He did anyway. Inside were 5 glossy photographs, the kind you print when you want to make something permanent. Not digital, not traceable, tangible. He flipped through them with a numb precision, his mind cataloging each detail as if detachment might shield him from the meaning. A woman and a man, laughing over drinks at a rooftop bar. The same pair leaning into each other at a corner table, her fingers on his collar, lips grazing his cheek. Another in a hotel lobby, she wore her favorite scarf, the one he bought her last fall. Then one of the man alone, looking straight at the camera, unaware. And finally, the last one, the man's left hand, clear as day, with a thin gold wedding band catching sunlight like an accusation. He didn't know the man. Not yet. But he knew what this was. What shook him wasn't the betrayal. It was the precision. Someone had orchestrated this, not out of anger or chaos, but with the quiet deliberation of a scalpel. And they hadn't sent it to him. They'd sent it to her. She was supposed to find this envelope. She was supposed to open it, burn with guilt or fear or regret, whatever cocktail of emotion this stranger thought appropriate. But she hadn't. Somehow, it had slipped into the wrong hands. And now it lived in his. The house was too quiet. The furnace hummed gently through the floorboards. In the kitchen, the digital clock on the stove blinked 6:42. She was home. Her bag sat by the front door, her coat draped over the back of a chair. He walked past it all like a ghost, the envelope still in his hand, the photographs tucked neatly inside, his fingers pressing against the edge like it might cut him. He didn't call out to her. Didn't ask. Didn't make a sound. He found her in the laundry room, folding clothes, his clothes, a shirt he hadn't worn in weeks. She looked up and smiled like nothing was off. Hey, I was about to throw on some pasta. You want red or white tonight? Her voice was normal. Too normal. That was the second thing. He said nothing. Just watched her fold, methodical and absent, the way people do when they're trying to look busy enough to not be asked questions. Then he saw it. The shirt she was folding, one of his old ones, the gray one with the faint stain near the hem, from spilled coffee 2 years back. Only now there was no stain. He blinked. She smoothed it down and set it in the basket. The coffee stain had never come out. He remembered trying everything: vinegar, baking soda, club soda, some DIY concoction she'd found online. It was a joke between them for weeks. His war wound. But here it was, fresh and clean, the fabric lighter in that spot, like it had never been touched. Not washed. Replaced. That shirt wasn't his. It was a duplicate. A stand-in. Same make. Same size. Same color. But new. Because the old one was gone. Because someone else had it. He stood still, rooted in the tile, watching her fold a life that wasn't real anymore. She didn't notice. She turned and asked him again, red or white, and he realized she'd asked without looking at him. She didn't want to see his face. Or maybe she didn't care. Maybe the version of him in her mind didn't matter anymore. He turned without answering, went back to the hallway, slipped the envelope back into the mail pile where it had landed. Let her find it later. Let her think it arrived late. Let her wonder if the silence in his eyes tonight was just stress or something else. Let her figure out whether he knew. She wasn't the only liar in the room anymore. He poured a glass of wine, red, because that's what he always chose, and sat in the chair near the window, watching the shadows stretch across the hardwood like veins. Somewhere out there, another man wore a ring and kissed a woman who smiled too easily. A man with no idea the storm crawling toward him had already found a face. His. They would meet soon. And when they did, the husband wouldn't yell, wouldn't threaten. He'd ask questions the man had never prepared for, questions his wife had carefully rewritten with her lies. And when the man looked at him, stunned, broken, and betrayed, not by the woman, but by his own willingness to believe her, the husband would simply nod. You get it now, he'd say. But not tonight. Tonight, the shirt with no stain lay folded in the basket, the wine was dark and dry, and the silence tasted like rust. She started humming in the mornings. It was the kind of thing that should have been harmless, soft, tuneless notes while pouring coffee or tying her hair, but it felt staged, like background music forced into a scene that didn't need it. He noticed it first on a Thursday, as she made her smoothie and sang under her breath with a cheer that came out too polished, too sharp around the edges. The kind of cheer that left no room for questions. The kitchen smelled like vanilla yogurt and deception. They still kissed goodbye, still said, "Love you," with the same syllables, the same cadence. But when she said it now, it came too fast, like a word she wanted to get out of her mouth before it turned into something else. When he kissed her temple, her skin was cold. She used to turn into him slightly, reflexively. Now she braced. That week, she changed her phone passcode. He didn't ask about it. He just watched the way she tilted the screen away from him when scrolling. How she started placing it face down every time she walked into a room. Once, it buzzed 3 times in a row while they were watching a movie. She didn't move to check it, just smiled, eyes still on the screen, and said, "Work drama. Nothing serious." But her laugh, too high, too light, belonged to someone who was trying to control a fire by ignoring the smoke. He began to catalog the small distortions. She started writing in a leather-bound journal she kept by the bed. Something new, private. She used to show him everything, texts from friends, articles she found funny, even dumb memes she thought he'd laugh at. Now there were entire worlds unfolding behind her eyes that didn't include him. She talked about self-reflection, personal growth, and the need to not lose herself in the routine of partnership. Words like smooth stones, polished and hollow. She used them in ways that sounded rehearsed, like lines she'd highlighted in a book club novel. "Nothing's wrong," she'd say, when he stared too long. "I'm just working on me." And then she'd flash that perfect smile, all teeth, no soul. One night, she fell asleep early on the couch, phone clutched loosely in her hand. He sat beside her, pretending to watch TV. The lock screen lit up once. No name, just the word "forwarded." A few seconds later, it vibrated again. This time, only an emoji. A single flame. It could have meant anything. Could have meant nothing. But the phone never buzzed like that before 10 p.m. He didn't touch it. Didn't try to unlock it. He didn't want to catch her anymore. He just wanted to know how deep the lie went. Later, in bed, she curled against him in her sleep. A reflex, maybe. Or a habit. Her breath was soft on his chest, warm in the dark. He stared at the ceiling and thought about that envelope again. The one still buried in the drawer in his office, untouched since the day it arrived. Sometimes he'd pull it out just to feel the weight of it. Like a loaded pistol he hadn't decided to use. He started waking up before her, listening to her footsteps from the shower to the dresser, watching how quickly she got dressed now, like she had somewhere to be, somewhere that mattered more. She began skipping breakfast. No more shared coffee. No more idle chatter about her dreams from the night before. She didn't dream anymore, apparently. One morning, he noticed she was wearing perfume he didn't recognize. Not strong, not floral, just different. Subtle enough to pass unnoticed. But he knew every scent she owned, and this wasn't one of them. When he asked, she blinked too slowly, then smiled. "Oh, that? Just something from a sample. I found it at the bottom of my gym bag. Do you like it?" He nodded, but the lie was louder than the scent. The almost moment came on a Tuesday. She was in the shower, and he was in the kitchen, cleaning up dinner. Her laptop sat on the counter, lid half closed, glowing faintly. A reflection danced on the screen, his own face in the dim overhead light, and something beneath the glass caught his eye. A folder, open, just long enough, just wide enough. Photos. He walked closer, hands still wet. Her name was on the folder. He tapped the trackpad. Nothing. The screen went black. He stood there for a long minute, staring at his own reflection again, as if he could find something in his own eyes that would tell him what he was missing. When she came out, towel wrapped and humming again, he was already sitting at the table, scrolling blankly through news headlines. "Long day?" she asked, drying her hair with a gentleness that felt like performance art. "Yeah," he said, not looking up, just thinking. She kissed the top of his head and walked past, humming louder now. And he realized it wasn't about catching her anymore. It wasn't even about knowing. It was about watching the illusion rot from the inside, like a tree that looks fine until it crumbles at the touch. He used to fight for her attention. Now he observed it. Every smile she gave him was measured. Every conversation deflected. Her life was a locked screen, and he'd stopped trying to guess the password. Not out of defeat. Out of clarity. She had written him out of the story long ago. He was just sticking around to see how it ended. It happened in the basement, of all places, the quietest, most neglected corner of their shared life. He had gone down to fix the flickering light over the laundry sink, more out of routine than urgency. The bulb had been sputtering for weeks, but that night he felt the itch to do something useful, something mechanical, something that wouldn't lie to him. The old toolbox was tucked behind the boiler, just where it always was. He reached for it, but something caught his eye. A cardboard box, newly sealed, labeled in her handwriting, Christmas. It wasn't Christmas. It wasn't even close. And she'd never stored holiday decorations down here before. That had always been the upstairs closet. He squatted down slowly, the silence in the basement like thick cloth pressed against his ears. He peeled the tape back with his thumbnail, precise, deliberate. Inside were no ornaments. No string lights. Just layers of folded clothes. Not hers. Not his. A stack of men's shirts, none of which he recognized, carefully folded with the practiced hands of someone who'd done it before. Beneath them, a half-empty bottle of cologne he'd never smelled on anyone but her. He took it out, uncapped it, and inhaled. There it was. The scent she'd been wearing for weeks, swearing it was a sample, something she'd found in an old gym bag. But it wasn't old. It was here, waiting in a box labeled for a holiday that hadn't arrived. Beneath the bottle was a passport. Not his. Not hers. A man's. Tucked inside was a plane ticket, one way, Barcelona. A flight booked under a name he didn't know, but one she'd scribbled beside a doodle of a heart on a sticky note stuck to the cover. Sunsets and sangria with you. That was it. That was the moment. No explosions. No trembling hands. Just silence. Cold and clean. He stood slowly, staring at the note. The letters rounded and neat. She'd written that while sitting beside him one night, maybe while they watched some show together, his hand resting on her thigh while her mind wandered elsewhere, to foreign air, to someone else's smile, to a life she was building in parallel with surgical precision. That was the detail. That was the thing he couldn't deny. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning an escape. Not an affair. An evacuation. He closed the box, not sloppily, but carefully. Retaped it. Put it back exactly where it was. Then he left the light bulb flickering. Let it stay broken. He no longer needed to fix things. Upstairs, she was on the phone. He could hear her voice through the vent in the floor. Laughing softly. Warm and effortless. He listened, eyes fixed on the hallway, until she said, "Hold on, I think he's still up." Then silence. Then a door creaked. He moved to the sink and washed his hands. Slowly. Thoroughly. When she entered the kitchen, he didn't turn around. "Everything okay down there?" she asked, her voice smooth as a still lake. He dried his hands on a dish towel, folded it, and set it beside the sink. Then he smiled. Not warmly. Not coldly. Just enough. "Yeah," he said. Just a flicker. That night he lay beside her in bed while she slept, her breathing slow and even. He didn't close his eyes. He didn't need to. Something inside him had gone still. Not numb as sharp. Focused. The kind of silence that makes room for a new kind of thought. She was already gone. Emotionally. Logistically. She'd written him out of the story, boxed up the version of herself he loved, and replaced it with this polished hologram who kissed him goodnight while dreaming of someone else's sunrise. So he stopped grieving. He started planning. There would be no confrontation. No shouting match. No cinematic climax where he cornered her with evidence and demanded answers. She didn't deserve that performance. No, she deserved precision. Patience. Strategy. She wanted escape? She'd have it. But not clean. Not painless. And not with the life she thought she'd leave behind. Tomorrow, he'd call the lawyer. Quietly. Secure a forensic accountant. Map every account, every asset, every weak spot in her little story. He'd gather documents, backdate emails, and prepare the narrative she didn't know he was writing. She wasn't the only one with secrets anymore. She wanted to disappear? Fine. But she would vanish into the storm he was about to become. A storm that didn't roar, it whispered, and wrecked just the same. She didn't expect to see the box. That's what made it perfect. It was just sitting there on the table, right in the center of the room, lit by the low glow of the chandelier, the one she insisted made the dining room feel more warm and European. The box was closed, but the tape had been peeled back with surgical care. She hesitated in the doorway, keys still in her hand, rain dripping from her coat. "What's that?" she asked, too casually, already shrinking. He looked up from his chair, slow and quiet, like a man who'd been waiting for this exact question. "Your idea of Christmas," he said. She blinked, her lips parted but silent, as if her brain hadn't caught up with the words. Then she stepped forward, cautious, rehearsed. I don't know what you think. Don't, he cut in, voice even but cold. Don't insult both of us like that. Her mouth twisted into something defensive, something performative. If you're going to accuse me of something, at least say it. Don't play games. He tilted his head slightly. Games. He opened the box with one hand, lifted out the shirts, folded perfectly, one by one. What's his name? She scoffed. Are you serious right now? He didn't answer. He just lifted the cologne, uncapped it, let the scent bleed into the air between them. Her jaw flexed. That's not mine. No, he said softly, it's his. But you already knew that. She crossed her arms. I don't know where you got this, but it's not what you think. He stood now, calm, deliberate. You booked a flight for him. You labeled it Christmas. You were going to leave this house and vanish into a vacation you built while sitting across from me at dinner. You were going to call it healing. Her voice raised, cracked like cheap porcelain. You don't know what it's like to live with you. I've been suffocating. For years. You don't see me. Don't you dare, he said, stepping closer, quiet but sharp. Don't you dare pretend that your escape plan was my failure. You were seen. Every day. You were loved in ways I didn't know how to show until you asked me to. And I learned. I bent. I broke my own spine to make space for you. And the whole time, you were building a runway to someone else's arms. She looked away now, biting her lip. People grow apart. It happens. He laughed, joyless. People grow. You disappeared. And when you did show up, it was a performance. The humming. The fake smiles. The lectures about boundaries, like I was some invader in my own marriage. I never meant for it to happen like this, she said, softer now. He shook his head. You meant for it to happen clean. You wanted to vanish without the fallout. You wanted to pack your guilt in a box and let me unpack the wreckage while you found yourself on someone else's chest. Her hands trembled now, fingers curling into her sleeves. I wasn't happy. And you think I was? His voice rose, not in anger, but in clarity. Do you think watching the person I build a life with shrink into a stranger was fulfilling? Do you think silence at dinner, deflection at every question, sleeping next to someone whose dreams you're not in, that's joy? She blinked, tears threatening, but not falling. Not yet. You used to be kind, she whispered. He took a breath. I used to be blind. And then came the part she didn't expect. He sat back down. Calm. Watching. Like the trial was over and the verdict had already landed. So what now? She asked, voice brittle. You just, what? Humiliate me? He leaned forward, elbows on the table. No, I don't have to. You're doing that yourself. Every word. Every excuse. Every attempt to rewrite this into something less cruel. I'm just giving you the space to hear how you sound when the mask slips. Her voice cracked. You don't understand what I've been through. I don't need to, he said. Because you made it very clear I wasn't invited to that part of your life. You built that pain in private, shaped it into justification, and then gave it to someone else. Not me. You stopped choosing me a long time ago. I just didn't realize I was being uninvited from my own marriage. Silence stretched then. Heavy. She finally sat down, shoulders folding in on themselves like a house caving under rot. Her face, bare now. The persona gone. No deflection. No spin. Just the woman who got caught crafting an exit while calling it healing. And he didn't move. Didn't speak again. He just watched. Still. Silent. Unflinching. And that, more than anything, was what broke her. She stood in the wreckage of her own performance, mascara clinging to her lashes like smoke after a fire, her hands trembling around the glass she never drank from. Around them, the room was quieter than it should have been, neighbors pretending to be immersed in conversation, plates being cleared with too much care, chairs squeaking slightly as people leaned just far enough to listen without seeming to. She saw it then, not just the end of a marriage, but the end of her control over it. Her face twisted, and she tried to laugh it off, as if the truth had been nothing more than a spat. You're overreacting, she said, her voice shaking but reaching for that familiar old condescension, that tone she used when belittling him felt like maintenance. This isn't what you think it is. You've blown everything out of proportion. He looked at her like a surgeon might look at a tumor, something dangerous, but no longer mysterious. No, he said, his voice low and steady, I've just stopped pretending not to see it. She flinched and straightened, pivoting. You're not so perfect either. You've made me feel invisible for years. You bury yourself in routines and checklists. You think providing is the same thing as loving. He nodded slowly, like he was logging a weather report. And you think running from one pair of arms to another is clarity? You think building a secret life while pretending to heal is bravery? Her jaw tensed. At least I was honest about needing space. He didn't smile. Didn't blink. You weren't honest. You were distant. Then secretive. Then gone. And when you showed up, it wasn't as my partner. It was as someone rehearsing lines for a role you'd already auditioned for with someone else. She stepped toward him, arms crossed now, her mask slipping into something sharper, something wounded. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did. His eyes didn't even flicker. That's the point. Her breath caught in her throat. He watched her sway under that sentence like it was a punch. You're cruel, she whispered. No, he said. I'm just done playing dead while you bury the truth one gentle lie at a time. Her voice cracked. I thought I was broken, and I thought maybe if I found something new, I'd feel whole again. He tilted his head. So you burned down what loved you for the illusion of wholeness. And now you want sympathy for the ash. The silence around them thickened. Even those pretending not to watch had stopped pretending. She reached for his hand, out of habit or hope, but he didn't move. She grabbed it anyway, tried to force warmth into it with shaking fingers. Please, she whispered, don't do this here. We can talk. We can fix it. He looked down at her hand like it was foreign. You planned to disappear. You labeled your exit plan Christmas. You were a new man sent into our bed. Tell me, how exactly do you propose we fix that? Her lip trembled. You're being cold. No, he said. I'm being clear. She looked around then, as if realizing she was finally naked in the spotlight, her story threadbare and fraying in front of the people she once tried to impress. The pity in their eyes wasn't for her anymore. I didn't mean for it to get this far, she muttered, voice growing small, as if shrinking could reverse the damage. I just didn't know how to come back. You didn't, he replied. You never planned to. You just didn't think you'd get caught before you left. Her shoulders curled inward now, a body folding into itself, all her practiced postures breaking down into something raw, unpracticed, human. I loved you, she said, not even convincing herself. He shook his head. You loved being loved. You loved being forgiven. You loved being the story's victim and the author at once. She reached again, desperate now, not even hiding the panic in her eyes. Please. I don't want to lose everything. He stepped back, and that inch between them was louder than any scream. You already did, he said. You just didn't hear it over your own lies. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her throat moved like she was swallowing fire. He didn't wait for more. He turned, not rushed, not dramatic, just done. And in that moment, she collapsed without falling. Everyone saw it. The unraveling. The ruin. And as he walked past their carefully curated life, the photos, the dinner guests, the memories varnished to look like love, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. Because silence was now his final word. And it was louder than anything she had left. She showed up at his office first, 3 months after the divorce was finalized, standing outside the glass doors like a ghost that hadn't realized she was dead. Her makeup was gone, her hair pulled back with none of the care she used to obsess over. She looked older, weathered, not from time, but from consequence. Her coat hung off her shoulders like a borrowed identity, and when he finally stepped out, eyes locking with hers, she didn't speak right away. She just stared, like she was still trying to find her reflection in someone who had stopped mirroring her long ago. Please, she whispered. Just talk to me. He paused, not out of hesitation, but calculation, as if weighing whether it was even worth acknowledging the woman she'd become. Talk about what? He asked flatly, tone dry as paper. About the past? That story's written. She flinched, but followed him as he walked. We were soulmates, she said, desperation clinging to the words like sweat. That has to mean something. He looked at her then, not with anger, not with grief, but with the distant disinterest of someone remembering an address he no longer lived at. It meant something, he replied. Then you turned it into a cautionary tale. She reached for his sleeve, but he stepped back. Not cold. Just done. She called later that night, her voice shaking through the receiver. I messed up everything, she cried. He's gone. Everyone's gone. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. Even my own sister won't answer my calls. I wake up and the silence eats me. I think about you constantly, about us. About how I ruined it all. I still love you. He didn't interrupt. He didn't hang up. He just listened until she choked on her own sobs. Then, finally, he spoke. I'm not the person you cheated on, he said quietly. He died the day you looked me in the eye and lied like I didn't matter. She fell silent. And you, he continued, you're not the woman I married. You're just what's left of her. She started to say something, some plea, some twisted spin of romantic tragedy, but he ended the call mid-sentence. After that, the messages came like rain is short, frantic bursts followed by days of silence. Please, just one coffee. Do you ever think about what we had? I'll never stop loving you. Sometimes she'd write long paragraphs, circling through phases, blame, regret, nostalgia, threats of self-harm, hollow poetry. She clung to every shard of the life she destroyed, not because she missed him, but because she couldn't stand the version of herself she was now forced to live with. She'd become a footnote in the social circles she once controlled, her name spoken in whispers or not at all. Her lover had moved on without ceremony. He ghosted her the moment the chaos touched his reputation. Her friends, once her audience, had turned inward, ashamed of how long they'd defended her, embarrassed by their own silence. Even her parents, devout and proud, stopped taking her calls after the fallout went public and the truth came out like rot beneath polished floors. And in the middle of it all, she kept reaching for the only person who used to see her as more than a mask. But he no longer saw a wife, or a woman, or even a mistake. He saw a stranger. A stranger who had walked into his life with promises and walked out with betrayal disguised as freedom. A stranger who mistook silence for healing and deception for growth. A stranger who burned the bridge she thought she could walk back across when the smoke cleared. And he had no interest in rescuing someone who lit the match. She lived now in the after, the place where the echoes of her choices were louder than her apologies. And when people asked about her, he didn't speak bitterly. He didn't speak at all. Because to him, she was no longer a wound. Just a warning. A lesson carved into the back of his mind in quiet hours. The kind of scar that doesn't ache anymore, but still knows exactly where it came from. Thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from, and what you would have done if it were your wife.